I'm going to draw up a histogram from the marks data in the Explore problems. To do this, I've done descriptive statistics. Firstly, I've checked the spreadsheet for errors, and to simplify matters, I've simply deleted those points which were not correct. Now I've done descriptive statistics, and you can see from the descriptive statistics that I've used Sturgis's rules to work out the number of intervals and the interval size. And then I've typed in a bin range. When you're drawing up a histogram, Excel actually needs you to put in to a range of cells where the intervals in the histogram are going to start and stop. And it's good practice to actually make these the same width. Because this is student marks, I've decided to go from 0 to 100 because that is the full range of the student marks that are possible. And I could have actually chosen the exact interval size that was recommended, but to simplify the histogram and the reading of the histogram, I've gone for an interval size of 10. This also corresponds to grade boundaries. For example, 40% and lower would be a fail, 40 to 50% a third, 50 to 60 a 2-2, 60 to 70 a 2-1, 70 and above a first. So it actually makes sense from a student's perspective. To draw up a histogram, I have to go to Data, and then Data Analysis, and Histogram, and OK. It will ask you for an input range. If your data is all in one column and there's nothing else in that column apart from the data, you can specify an input range by clicking on the column header. I don't advise you to do this because it slows Excel down. I know these data points are actually in B1 to B98, so I'm simply going to type it in. So that's an alternative. If you don't know where the end of the data is, you can click and drag, and it will do exactly the same thing. I then need to input my bin range, and again I'm going to click and drag. If you can see it on the screen, the simplest way of recording data is simply to click and drag. I have labels in the first row. You'll see that I've got a header on the bins. I've got a header, percentage, on the marks. So I want to include labels. You should include a label on top of your data and on top of your bin range. If you don't do this, it will assume that the first cell in your bin range is actually a header rather than actually an interval. I'm going to shove it into a new worksheet ply, and unless you actually click one of these three here, you won't get any output. So I'm going to click on Chart Output and then OK. And there's my chart. If I click on this, you'll see that there's a blue box around the data and there's a mauve box around the bin. So I'm going to tidy up this histogram. So this is, I clicked on histogram and then clicked just after histogram of exam marks. Bin. So I've clicked on bin and then I'm going to triple click to select the whole word. I'm going to type in mark and then percentage in brackets. The frequency is the actual frequency of individuals. That's fine. I don't actually need this. I've only got one thing in my histogram. So I can click on this and hit the delete button to get rid of it. And then I'm going to resize. I could edit this histogram to get rid of these points where there are no zeros. So if I click on my histogram and then click on save, you'll see that the data is highlighted there. I don't need this more. So just to have a thing between 100% and 0% is fine. I could actually move these in a little closer by clicking and dragging to get rid of the zeros. It does give slightly more emphasis to the central points, but since this is exam marks, which are normally scored between 0 and 100, I'm going to leave them both in. So there is my completed histogram. The important thing about a histogram is to get the shape of the distribution out. So to use frequency is an adequate way of doing it. If you're going to compare different histograms, then it's better to use relative frequency. So rather than absolute numbers, you want the proportion or the percentage in each of these intervals of the total. So I'm going to do that now. And to do that, you want to sum up the sum of the frequencies. So I'm going to go Home and then click on this icon here in Editing, Sum, and hit Enter. And there are 97 individuals. And then I'm going to type relative frequency here to put in a header row, and then is equal to, so I'm going to put in a formula, the value in cell B2 divided by the value in cell B14. Now I'm going to copy this function down. If I try and copy this function down to the next column, it will give me is equal to B3 divided by B15, and the value, the sum that I actually want, is in B14. So I actually want to make this a fixed reference. And to make this a fixed reference for frequency, you shove in $1. And then you can pull this down. So I move the cursor over the black box in the corner, and then I pull it down. So I've got relative frequency now. I'm just going to click in my graph, and I'm going to move this column of data over. And you can see now, instead of frequency now, I've got relative frequency. I'll just tidy up the y-axis label. Okay, so there's my histogram. And just finally, of exam marks.